Welcome to the Thursday, August the 28th, 2025 edition of the Daily Article Podcast from Denison Forum. I am Chris Elkins, narrator, voicing today's daily article, authored by our cultural theologian, Dr. Jim Denison. A gunman opened fire with a rifle through the windows of a Catholic church in Minneapolis yesterday, striking a group of children celebrating Mass during the first week of school. 2 children, ages 8 and 10, were killed. 14 children, ages 6 to 15, and 3 parishioners in their 80s were wounded by gunfire. Minneapolis Chief Brian O'Hara said, "The sheer cruelty and cowardice of firing into a church full of children is absolutely incomprehensible." Officials added that the shooter, identified as 23-year-old Robin Westman, died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. According to court records, Westman's name was changed from Robert in 2020 on the grounds that Westman identified as female. FBI Director Kash Patel said, "The FBI is investigating this shooting as an act of domestic terrorism and hate crime targeting Catholics." As a mark of respect for the victims, President Trump ordered American flags to be flown at half-staff until sunset, August 31st. Pope Leo expressed his heartfelt condolences and stated that he, quote, prays for the wounded as well as the first responders, medical personnel, and clergy who are caring for them and their loved ones, end quote. We should all join him in such intercession today. However, this horrific tragedy can cause us to overlook another shooting that occurred the day before when a gunman sprayed dozens of rounds at a group standing on a sidewalk across from a Minneapolis high school, killing 1 and injuring 6. It's a sign of our times that this attack is scarcely in the news because of the attack that followed it the next day. When such atrocities involve children, my first thought is of our 4 school-age grandchildren. My second thought is to ask, what can I say in response to this tragedy that I have not said in response to similar tragedies that have plagued our nation in recent years? As I prayed about the answer, I was led to an insight I had not considered before, one that I hope will be as helpful to you as it was to me. As you know, the problem of innocent suffering is especially a challenge for Christians because we believe that our God is all-knowing, all-powerful, and all-loving. As a result, He knew about these shootings before they occurred, had the power to stop them, and loves the victims enough to want to do so. But He did not. Here's the paradoxical thought I'd like us to consider. When God does not do what we want Him to do, our frustration is exacerbated by all the times that He does. If the Lord never intervened to prevent disease, disaster, and tragedy, we would have no right to expect Him to do so this time. If He never answered our prayers for supernatural help, we would be foolish to continue making such requests. But He does sometimes perform miracles, sometimes in answer to our pleas. We do sometimes feel His undeniable presence in our pain, His strength in our suffering, His hope in our despair. So, when we do not, we judge our disappointments by our successes. In other words, we measure His character through the prism of our experience. Our evangelical faith can exacerbate this tendency. We emphasize the experience of salvation, insisting with Jesus that we must be born again, found in John 3, verse 7. However, making experience the starting place for our faith can lead to making experience the criterion of our faith. Then, when our personal experience seems to contradict biblical teaching, we can judge the latter by the former. The solution is for us to measure our circumstances through the lens of God's character as revealed by His Word, not the reverse. Since we cannot know what our omniscient Father knows, using our fallen minds to measure His divine nature by our finite experience is clearly illogical. When a mechanic takes apart my truck's engine before repairing it, he seems to me to be making the problem worse rather than better. That's my fault, not his. When surgery causes me more initial pain than the problem the surgery was intended to remedy, and I blame the surgeon, that's my fault, not hers. This week's shootings in Minneapolis, viewed through the prism of Scripture, reveal the fallenness and sinfulness of humans, not the weakness or unkindness of God. Even though our limited minds cannot understand how to reconcile the biblical fact from 1 John 4:8 that God is love with the tragedies we see, our finitude does not change His character. Here's the practical point. When we choose to believe that God is still as powerful and loving as we believed Him to be before tragedy struck, we are empowered to trust Him for the power and love we need in the midst of our pain. If we do not, we forfeit our God's strength and hope. Then, judging Him by our experience of Him, we exacerbate a vicious cycle of disappointment that leads to unbelief, that leads to more disappointment, that leads to further unbelief. I'm not attempting to persuade you that faith in God is easy for suffering people to choose, just that it's essential. But I can assure you that even the desire to have such faith positions us to receive God's help in trusting Him. A father's prayer in the face of his child's suffering is recorded in Mark chapter 9, verse 24, so that it can be ours. I believe, help my unbelief. When we say with Job from chapter 13, verse 5, though he slay me, I will hope in him, our hope becomes the bridge His grace travels into our hearts. Why do you need this bridge today? Thanks for listening to today's Daily Article Podcast. If you've been meaning to get our latest printed devotional, Love the Lord Your God, today's your day. Written by Dr. Jim Denison and his son, Dr. Ryan Denison, this 30-day devotional walks through the greatest commandment, offering biblical clarity, daily reflection, and space to draw near to God even on the hard days. When you give to Denison Forum today, we'll send you a copy as our thank you. But this offer ends soon. Your gift will equip more believers to respond to today's culture with courage and truth. So please, visit supportdf.org. Again, that's support, the letter D, the letter F.org. Find a link to give in today's episode notes.